Welcome back to the MMA Creators Podcast, episode number 95. I do believe we're on. Now, Will, you're coming in with a bit of negative energy today, bit of angst, bit of an annoyance, and I feel like I'm going to have to probe you on it. It sounds like it's been a long day because we are recording in the evening, and that's not atypical for you, but today seems extra difficult of all days, so give us the lowdown.
I'm good. To be honest, I just had to take 30 seconds, intensely smile, reflect on the things that are happening in my life, the things that I'm grateful for, the things that I'm blessed to do. And it's as simple as a fickle emotion of annoyance. To be honest, I came off a call with Toe Wrestling about the event which is upcoming this weekend. There's a lot of spanners in the works for that, let's say. A few hurdles to overcome, a few barriers to jump over, off the back of a very hectic week. So, on top of lack of rest and lack of patience for things at the moment, that's all it was. But, like I said, in general, extremely blessed, extremely grateful, and just a temporary spat of less than good vibes. But I'm chatting
Compounding
to you,
frustrations.
we're sitting down, we've got a lot to get into. I've got an able body, an able mind, and a fantastic life, so I'm good.
There you go. Look at that, mic drop. And I feel like the most logical place to start off with is the thing we've been talking about and has been built up over the last probably 2 months now. We've been talking about it each week, you know, as we've seen the progression of your casuals pop up come for UFC London. And although the actual fight card didn't live up to expectations, which I'm sure we can briefly touch on later on, your pop-up, at least in my opinion, of course I was there, and so was a few other creators that I know. It was a success by all accounts, but of course it was your event, you helmed it, it was your idea. What was your overall thoughts on how it turned out?
No, I think that's a good place to start. Give me your honest, constructive feedback for everything.
I one minor thing I actually thought in the moment was some seats would have been good for the talk. I feel like, yeah, you're nodding. I feel like you already knew that. That's just something I picked up on subconsciously when I was there. I thought that would have been a nice touch. But apart from that, mate, I think it was great. I loved it. It was nice to connect. That's what in fact, that was actually the opinion and the sort of sentiment I shared with a few of the creators who were there. Shout out to a few guys who were in the TikTok space, Jordan, who I met, and Brandon as well. Two very nice guys. I had a good chat with them. And we were both all saying the same, all three of us, sorry, were saying the same thing about it's so great to connect. And I feel like that's really what that pop-up was about, at least for me. And I know a few other people, was just about that connection, because you know how many times I've said it on here, how isolating the content creation game can be just innately for what we do. We got a lot of work and different facets on our shoulders. So it's nice to be able to sort of break bread and I guess find common ground with other people working in the same space. So that's what I got out of it.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because that was always the intention from early, or at least one of the pillars of why I wanted to do it from early. And I really learned that in the first pop-up I did in Manchester, where I didn't quite anticipate that as much as it happened. There were multiple creators there, they were all chatting, and then off the back of the talk that I did in the Manchester one, people were creating content with the speaker, they were doing mini interviews off the back of it. So that really was a major factor. I wanted a sort of a hub, a community where people could come together, they could rub shoulders with people that were going to be able to elevate them in whichever way they wanted. And I think that actually happened with a lot of people there. I think a lot of people met different creators or different people in different businesses or brands that gave them an insight into things that they were really looking to get stuck into. So yeah, I'm glad you did that. In regards to the seats, 100%. I was pulling out seats from the cupboards and just trying to find as many as I could. I didn't foresee quite as many people. I probably should have been a little bit more prepared for that. And in truth, just reflecting on the entire event, I made a laundry list of things that I would have changed and improved. And the one word that we started the year with was proactive. Proactive and leverage. Those were the words that we spoke about so many times. And one thing that I'll have to give myself a pat on the back for is, for my entire life, I've been someone that isn't proactive and isn't organized. And I think for the most part, in regards to my standards, I was very organized and I was very ahead of schedule. Even if it was last minute on some things, it wasn't as last minute as the rest of my life has been. But there were just some small details which fell by the wayside because I didn't quite get enough time. I didn't quite get enough planning ahead of the game. Things like additional seating, things like descriptions under the pieces of art to go with the QR code. A few more artistic projects just up on the walls, just within frames and things of that nature. So there were small tweaks that I would make. But from my perspective, I was happy with how everything went. I think if you look at it with all things considered, I had multiple people help me out with different angles of this project. And then on the day as well, I had a couple of hands help me set up. Of course, I had the speakers and whatnot as well, which helped me out. But bearing in mind, it was pretty much done as a solo mission. If I look at it compared to Manchester, which was the first event, I would say it was a great success. And what I would say is, towards the back end of actually finalizing this and actually executing on it, I'd realized that this is something I've always done. I've always done these things. When I was 15, 16, I've said many times, I worked as pretty much the bar manager at my local cricket club, and we would throw beer festivals. So we would have a beer festival in the cricket club, and we would do it on an absolute shoestring. We would call in favours and we would run this event. And the first ever event we did was on one weekend. I was probably about 16, top 17, and there was 100 people. Then by the second and third event that we did, we had 2,500 people across the weekend.
Fucking hell.
And that was a full week of setting up gazebos, getting pallets for free off of a local business to then create a bar out of, calling in favours from the local brewery to get fridges, making sure there was food, entertainment, different angles to every single part of the event, making sure the logistics ran smooth, making sure the user experience was as good as it possibly could be. So when I actually reflected on it towards the back end of the week, I realised I've actually been doing this. And one of the first, I know I'm going on a big side tangent here and I will waffle a bit here, but I remember reading one piece of advice once when I was writing a CV when I was probably about 19, maybe a little bit younger. It was probably for my uni CV actually, when you have to send over all those sort of details. And I remember it saying, write in a brief description at the top of your CV, instead of just using terms, I'm a fantastic team leader, I'm very communicative, I'm strong in strategic decision making, and all of these ambiguous waffly terms. Use statistics, use analysis, use difference between one and another. And I remember using in my description, I've got it on my computer, the fact that I did start the beer festival with a small team, obviously, at 100 people, and within 2 years converted that to nearly 3,000 people across the weekend, pulling in tens of thousands of pounds. So the reason I say that is to give context of, I've actually been doing this. And when I reflect on UFC London and the pop-up, in Manchester, I did it on a shoestring and I did it in very short notice, and I had maybe 10 people collectively come and sold no money and sold no tickets. Within about 7 months, I sold 70 tickets, a lot more pounds generated from the clothing and the tickets. And then off the back of that, a lot more people. Probably had about, I don't know, 45 people collectively over the entire event. So on a whole, I was pretty happy with myself, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm actually glad you brought up two of those things. The clothing and stuff I'll get into just in a minute. But I'm really glad you mentioned about the beer festival and that progression, because we actually had a very brief conversation at the pop-up, which is very similar. I said to you, mate, look how insane this is. Just appreciate this. And you said this is only the beginning. I was like, you're exactly right. This is something that could be so much bigger, and that's not a knock or a bad thing to say, but the potential is there. And as you said, down the line, growing it and expanding it, that excites me, and I'm sure yourself as well, of where this sort of pop up, even if it's just an annual thing, could go as you build the Casuals brand. You know, just the reach and the sort of the arm and the influence you have to build something even bigger and do everything but just more. I think that's really, really exciting. But I think looking at the clothing, as you said, and your merchandise, again, you don't have to touch on it too much if you don't want to talk about it. But that's something I actually was curious about. Was the number side of things, on how did those sales go for you in particular? Is anything that performed below expectations, above expectations, or were you just happy overall, or maybe not so?
I think there's areas that, again, I could have done a better job in multiple facets, and I'll explain it in more detail, right? So, on the build up to the event, previously in Manchester, and I'll keep using that as a comparison, I did little to no marketing of it. And bearing in mind that it was in Manchester and I hadn't even been to the area, it made it logistically a little bit more difficult. But that shouldn't be an excuse. I did little to no marketing. This time I did more marketing. But the thing that I really wanted to do that I didn't, and I'm annoyed at myself for this, and it would have optimized the sales, is I collected the emails off the back of the tickets. So when you bought or when you acquired a free ticket, or if you bought a ticket with a goodie bag, or if you bought a ticket with an add-on purchase like a signed comic, I collected the emails. What I didn't do, which I really should have, is set up a mail marketing campaign, and then off the back of that, provided value on the behind the scenes, sure, to build hype, but then also have the option to pre-order different garments, so I could firstly understand the sizing models better, and then secondly just get a better pulse for numbers, and thirdly just generate more sales from the get, right? So that is one thing that I would have dramatically changed. Thirdly, it got closer to the time and I realized there were actually going to be more people than I maybe realized, or at least I wasn't prepared enough for then having staff. So I was a bit short notice in being able to call in favors. So then it dawned on me that I had to be both. So I had to be the person that was boxing up and actually taking the payments for the project, for the products, which isn't a problem. But I also wanted to be the person that was going to be able to go and mingle with all the people. And there were a lot of different groups and a lot of different individuals. And I wanted to make sure that I at least gave everyone some time and some insight and had a conversation with them. And it was difficult to balance both. So
that's something I noticed, actually.
Yeah.
You were zipping around a lot, and I did feel for you a little bit.
No, I didn't feel for myself necessarily, or I didn't think, oh, this is difficult. It was more of a case of, I wish I could have just given more. I wish that the sales or that side of things was maybe taken care of by a third party, or just someone that was working on the event, so that I could give my entire self to the event, which I believe would have been more beneficial. Maybe not in the micro, but definitely in the macro. So I think I did a good job, with all things considered, of balancing the two.
Yeah.
And I think it was just about at a number where that was manageable, but I would have still liked to have done that more, to be honest.
Yeah. I'd say overall you smashed it, but if you had to give, I know it's a bit arbitrary, but a score out of 10, just overall for the smoothness, just give me an overall feel for the outcome of the pop-up, the Casuals Corner pop-up UFC London.
10 being what?
The optimal, the best outcome, everything you ever wanted, 1 being an absolute shit show.
10 being the best that it could possibly be given the circumstances.
Yes, within the scope of what you can do.
Honestly, probably a 9, to be honest. And
I like that.
I'm very rarely going to say something along those lines, but with all things considered, Of course, there's a million things that I could change and improve and optimize. Sure, I think that's a good thing because you're always getting feedback. But for how the event ran, for how people seemed to receive it, for how the speakers went, for how the artwork looked on the wall, for how the clothing turned out, to how I had every single piece that I actually sent off for. So comics, stickers, hats, boxing, packaging, the branding, different elements
Yes.
like the
I actually, just sorry to jump in there, something I really loved, and it's just very much reflective of, I think, your approach to things and your character is the little details, right? Even the bags on the goodie bags. I didn't even pick one up, but they looked premium, right? And I remember there's a conversation we had. You got advice from your mentor of sorts who'd built a very strong uh, empire within the clothing realm, if I'm not mistaken, right? And something that they brought up was all you got to do is get it in the hands of one person, and the best way to make a first impression towards achieving that is the branding, the packaging. That's a whole experience in itself, right? It's not just about the clothing, and even if it's a little detail, just like the branding on the goodie bag, the sort of jet black with the grey casuals imprint logo. I thought that was a really, really nice touch, and it reminded me of that conversation we had quite a while ago now, actually.
Even that, right? I had very elaborate plans with the packaging, really bespoke, beautiful packaging that was going to reflect the pieces. And again, through my own fault, no one else's, through my own fault of not being prepared enough, not being ahead of the game enough, leaving things too late, I couldn't quite get done what I wanted to. So I had to fall back on being a little bit more resourceful. So instead of buying custom bags, which the lead times would have been too long and the price at that point, everything was just really stacking up on top of each other, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
I had to then look at, right, how can I be more resourceful? Right, I can buy some nice bags, some just matte black bags, like you said. How can I personal brand them? Right, I can buy a rubber stamp and I can buy some white ink and then I can have my branding on that. Okay, cool. Now I can close the bags with a bespoke sticker. Okay, sweet. That's another element. Okay, now we have the envelopes, which are embossed with the Chinese logo for the red envelopes, which signify luck and prosperity, and of course, New Year in the Chinese New Year. So I'm glad that you picked up on the small details because I think that's something which I'm always big on. I just don't always necessarily execute on it as well as I can because it requires a certain level of being proactive. And I did it to a certain extent, but I could have done it tenfold, to be perfectly.
I mean, that's the mindset that goes for the both of us, and I think most people in the creative industry. You know, we always say it about being maybe not perfectionists, but always wishing we could have done more and gone a little extra, a little further, gone the extra mile. I feel like that's a never-ending conversation, regardless of how good you do or people think you have done. But you know, you can take it from me. You know, I wouldn't lie, and if I say I think you smashed it, I think you did a really good job. But something I did.
Go on.
Sorry, go. No. I was going to segue, mate. But you got something else?
No, I've got a couple of things I want to ask you about it.
Sure.
One of the difficult things was someone in Fight Week said to me, "So have you prepared the questions for the speakers?" And usually, with obviously the more interviews you do, the more conversations, the more podcasts, all of these things, you get more experience, you get more comfortable, and you get a better flow state, and you understand subconsciously how to operate things a little bit better. So that is true, yes. But saying that, 20 minutes preparation can always make the world of difference in anything. Whether you're having a Zoom call about a potential business meeting or whether you're having an interview, it can always make the world of difference. When someone said that to me, I was so inundated with things happening in Fight Week. Bearing in mind that whilst I'm organising all of this, I'm also still working on Fight Week with not.
That's actually where I was going to segue to, so we can touch on that in a little bit. But yeah, we got
so
not envying your position here, I have to say.
So no, super grateful, right? But just to add some
color
to the situation, obviously we've got Nathaniel and Lonnie on the card, and they weren't necessarily present all week because they went home quite a lot, but there was still a bunch to do. And a small segue, but what I will say is these fight weeks are so important for me in regards to, I don't like to use the word networking because it sounds a bit sort of corny, a bit cheesy,
Corporate.
a bit corporate. Yeah, just chatting to people essentially is what it is. But that is what I would say is probably the most valuable thing that happens in fight week. So I'm always very cognizant of giving as much of my time to that as possible, because there's so many different people from so many different walks of life and different scopes of the industry I have to speak to. It's not even I should, I have to. So the reason I say that is I want to circle back to someone asked about have I prepared questions, and I honestly said no. And I don't think I'm going to get the time, and I don't think I'm even going to go for that, because I know these people, I know I can have a chat with them, and I know the industries that they work in. But the difficult thing was, when push came to shove and I was literally just about to sit down with them, I then realized I had not prepared a single thought. I had not put a second thought into anything that was about to come out my mouth or I was about to ask them. And in Manchester, I'd never done this thing before either. So I just sat on the sofa with Adam and I thought, right, I'm going to ask him a few questions and we'll sort of see how it goes. But there's a lot less people there. There's probably there's not four. There's probably about 6, 7 people there at the time. So I had a better gauge of the room and I thought I was going to keep it short and sweet and it is what it is. But I realized in live speed that there were actually quite a lot of people.
Yeah, I turned around. I was standing near the front. I turned around. I was like, damn, all these people on the sofas sitting in that squad. I was like, shit.
Yeah.
I did not. Yeah, I was. I didn't know you didn't prepare. So I guess take that as a compliment, because I think you did a pretty good job.
Well,
I wouldn't have known unless you said it.
The difficult thing with it was, as I got into it, I'm looking around at all of these eyeballs on me in a packed out studio, and I'm sitting there thinking, I had these thoughts the last time I did it, but this time more accentuated. I'm thinking, first of all, I had no concept of time. There was no clock. I couldn't see the screen on the camera, so I had no concept of time. I was thinking, how long do I make this? How informative do I make this? How valuable do I try and make this? Then halfway through, I'm thinking, this is quite chunky in regards of information and things that I'm asking. Do I make it a little bit more lighthearted? Shall I drop in some jokes? Shall I wrap this up? Do I keep it
There was
going?
a couple of there. There was a couple in there. I think they served well. I think they were well received. I thought it was well received. Yeah.
But I had all these thoughts flowing through my mind as I'm trying to have a good conversation with the guest, and honestly, I just had no idea, and I was just absolutely freeballing it from the get. But the one thing,
well, that's where that experience comes in, right? Sorry to just cut in, but that is true, because I would never have known, and I'm someone that probably would have picked up on that, knowing how many times we've had conversations with other people as in a third party on these episodes, interviewing people. Maybe that's something I would have picked up on if you hadn't prepared, because usually we do for these guest episodes that we have. So, and I didn't even notice. So I think that speaks, as I said earlier, to how good of a job you did in terms of just speaking off the cuff and not having any preparation at all. So full credit to you in that regard. But sorry, carry on.
No, I appreciate that first and foremost. That was really my point, was just I didn't have any clue of how to operate this. I would have probably done a little Q&A section like I did last time, but equally, I was cognizant of the fact that I'd sat with these people, or they were listening or dialed in for the best part of 20 minutes, and I didn't want to exhaust the audience. So that was why, even before I brought the second guest out, I just said on the mic, I said, right, let's just have a couple of minutes breather. I'll come say hello to a few of the people I haven't spoke to, and then we'll get back into it. Just because I wanted people to have a chance to kind of go and not
process.
Yeah, not just squeeze the sponge dry. So that was something which I found quite difficult. So how did you find the speakers is my question to all of it.
Yeah, it was good. Obviously, speaking almost selfishly from my own personal experience, I didn't take as much away from the one with Adam, but that's because we've spoken to him on here before, so a little bit different. But yeah, I thought Sean was very much a welcome addition. I mean, and full credit to Adam as well. I'm speaking for the event as a whole, absolutely a positive for both of them. It was nice to speak to Sean afterwards as well, actually. I had a good chat with him just before I left. Yeah, I thought it was great. I think maybe a point of criticism is... Actually, it's tough to say. I was going to say, if you had another speaker, and we're talking hypothetically here, in an event that had a larger scale, bigger place, I don't know, everything bigger, right? Larger. Maybe you have the speakers spread out throughout the event to sort of breadcrumb it.
Was it quite quiet?
In what way?
You mean throughout the event? Got you.
Yeah, I mean just structurally. I don't. Yeah,
got you.
That would just be a hypothetical for a future event on a larger scale. But I think for what you were trying to achieve for this one, I think it worked perfectly. Yeah.
You know what? It's a relevant point as well, because I was actually, I'll tell you the dilemma that I had is it was obviously 11 till 2 that I was running it. And then I kind of thought, for the most part, people were going to rock
I know what you're going to say.
People were going to rock up about 12.
Trickle in, right?
That's what I thought.
Yeah, people flew in, right? I surprised me as well. I mean, I came early, as I said, just because, you know, of course I was going to come on time. But, you know, I was with you. I expected people to just sort of trickle in a bit later on. But no, you're right. Sorry, I had to cut in. I just knew what you were going to say. Because people just flew in pretty much straight off the bat. It surprised me.
Caught me super off guard, right? Because now I'm stuck between, I roughly know how many people were turning up just because the event, right? I didn't think that 100% of the people with those tickets were going to come. But a lot of them were paid. So I also knew that people that weren't there, that had the paid tickets and the goodie bags and things like that were likely going to turn up. So there were quite a lot of people that weren't still there by 12 o'clock. And I was thinking, do I crack on with the speakers? Do I try and wait for them a little bit more? People have been here an hour. And then you know what it was? One person said to me, they'd been there about an hour, and one person said to me, it's like, thanks so much for having us. Like, we're going to shoot off now and whatnot. And I thought, right, do it now. I was like, that was all I needed. I was like, right, do it now.
Yeah.
And I literally just jumped straight on the bike, and I was like, right, let's get this cracking, because there's no point in sort of holding it out any longer. So one thing that someone said to me, and also Sean said to me as well, Sean came off the speech and he said, mate, people were really intensely engaged. And I said, yeah, it kind of it caught me off guard as well. I thought people would
he said that to me actually as well. He just said it surprised him.
Yeah, I thought people would listen, but I didn't think they would be quite as dialed in as they were.
Well, I'll tell you why that is, because we spoke about that before. When you were picking guests or trying to figure out who to get for it, you wanted people that could offer a unique angle and unique experiences to tell. And I think that's exactly the reason why. It wasn't just a fighter talking, and as much as people probably would have listened to that, having guys like Sean and guys like Adam who can offer a sort of behind the scenes look into the areas that we don't really see or hear about at all, that are less glamorous, at least on the surface, you know, there's a unique angle there. And I think that people were very intent on hearing all about it. So I think that's probably why.
Did you like the pizza?
I didn't have any, mate. I'd already eaten. I'm sorry, brother. I'm not I'm not really you might hate me for this. I'm not really a massive pizza guy. Not that I wouldn't have had it. I do like pizza. It's just never my first choice. You know what I mean? If I'm going takeaway, I'm never picking pizza. They did look good though, I have to say.
What's your
go-to
go-to
good
takeaway?
pizza, and I know you. I mean, I do like Mexican. There's a good Mexican place near me. It's a little bit rogue. Mate, I like a burrito and quesadillas. But if we're talking conventional, I'd probably say just a safe bet, like a Chinese, you know?
First of all, I knew you were going to say Chinese. Second of all, logistically tell me how to dish up a Chinese to 40 people.
No, I didn't say you should have it for the pop-up, mate. You asked me what my favourite takeaway was. I would never do that for it, mate. Imagine 50 metric tons of chicken chow mein spilled over the, one of those like mukbang things where they don't even have the plate. They just like pour it all over the kitchen counter. You should have done something like that.
Talk about 50 metric tons of chicken chow mein. I am currently, after we get off this call, I am on an email thread to Big John himself to set up a episode with myself, Lon, and Nath.
That is an unreal segue. You said that. I was like, where the fuck are you going to take that? But I cannot think of anything more fitting. That is class. Is that looking like it's coming together, or is this early stages?
Oh, it's early stages, but I'm making it happen.
I don't doubt that. That would be interesting. Big John has that sort of... For those of you who don't know who Big John is, Big John is a character, to say the least. He's also very big, and he's a man who loves Chinese takeaways. But more importantly, if we're talking about in the combat sports realm, his son is professional boxer Johnny Fisher, who is English champion, I believe. You know, signed under Eddie Hearn as well. I could be wrong in that regard. Boxing is not my first language in a lot of ways, but he is him and his dad, for that matter, are both big personalities on the internet, and they understand the content game. You know, they're unassuming in a lot of ways, but they actually are very intelligent in what they're doing, and there's a reason they're two of the biggest names in the combat sports realm. So more power to you. If you get that done, I am very much invested, I have to say.
When I get that done. Nathaniel's actually on Ariel's show probably as we speak.
No, he's already been on it, mate.
Has
I was
he?
listening to it. I was listening to it earlier.
Don't
actually,
tell me anything because I've not listened to it.
I won't
want to listen to it, so I'll have a little gander. But in totality, I think the pop-up went pretty well. The artwork was
awesome,
phenomenal. Tell me I'm wrong.
No, I forgive me for misremembering the artist's name, but I had a chat with him,
Ollie.
And I was speaking to him about. Yeah, I was speaking to him about just the process, and like only like 5-10 minutes, but you know, obviously I had to compliment on how incredible the work is, and I talked to him about the 286 piece he did, which was Edwards versus Usman 3, the sort of headshot dead finger gun, which is a really cool shot, and it was a great painting. And I told him, I was like, I remember seeing that doing the rounds on social media because I think it got some really good traction back when he first made it. So I had to compliment on that. But I thought they looked great on the wall. And as you said earlier about just the missing pieces in terms of the QR codes and the name tags, right? You said just underneath, or the captions, that would have been a welcome addition. So that's something, I mean, as you said, would have been good to add. But I thought they looked great on the wall. Really nice, big and bold, especially on the brick. On the brick wall, it just worked. I think that would look really good.
Yeah, the studio was. You hadn't been to the studio before, had you?
Yeah, we recorded the episode there.
Of course we
Paul.
did. Of course we did. That's my bad memory.
Yeah, nice one, mate.
Yeah, it was perfect for that. So yeah, I think to round up on the pop up, it was very successful. Sold a good amount of clothing pieces, sold a good amount of tickets, and were quite a lot of people there. Had some nice food, had some good speakers, and by the way, the aesthetics of the content coming off the back of it, different.
It's all in the pipeline right now,
Just
right?
different. There is no one doing it like that. There just isn't. And I'm not trying to just sit here trying to big myself up, but I am just finally crafting, like I've always wanted, my own lane, exactly my own lane, so that when anyone works with me, when anyone associates themselves with me, they cannot compete with me. It doesn't matter if they're the best videographer, the best photographer, the best interviewer, the best flipping clothes maker. It doesn't matter to me, because no one, absolutely no one, does what I do. And I do me. Completely my own thing. Completely my own mission. Completely my own path. I amalgamate so many different areas of interest together in such a unique and authentic way, and do it with such output and consistency that not a single human being on this earth can compare me to anyone and anything.
I think that's definitely true, and part of the reason that is, at least I think, when I compare your brand and your page to other accounts within that space, within the niche as a whole, right? There's many who probably came before you who, on first glance, probably have a higher follower count, if we can go on to that surface level. But a lot of them are very much, they're not personal brands. They are basically grounded only at the basis of being a news outlet. Stuff like Freak MMA, right? That's a good example. If I'm not mistaken, they basically just post news and stuff like that, and they do very well as a result. But accounts like that, or what was that MMA Island account back in the day? That was quite a big one. Before I think they got shut down or something like that. Right. So you're understanding the point I'm saying is none of those guys have that level of personal brand, and more importantly, an audience who is attached to them as well as you do. Even if right now you probably don't have the follower count as big as them, I guarantee that you probably have followers who are far more engaged with you, your content, and more importantly, you overall.
I say this to other people, right? And remind me of the funny story when you say about the audience. I say this to a lot of people, so I have to think of it myself as well, because it is true. I always tell friends who obviously are starting to crack out their content and asking me different questions, I continually tell them, in this time more than ever, your followers are more relevant than they've ever been. It's engagement, and also it's not just how many people follow you, it's who watches what you're doing, who sees what you're doing, right? And there were so many times throughout the years where I would land on my page and I didn't hate myself. That is a bit of an extreme. But for all intensive purposes, I hated the brand because it wasn't a reflection of myself. It wasn't a reflection in quality that I would have liked. It wasn't a reflection in quantity that I would have liked. It wasn't a reflection in regards to different areas of the game. It would have been news headings and clips. It wouldn't have been full-scale food operations and me traveling the world. And now I look on my Instagram page, and if you just land on the front page and have a look at what's pinned, you've got me and the boys enjoying a night watching the UFC, which is what we've always done. Boom, 3 million views and it's going crazy, and it's food, barbecues, and just me and my mate. The next one is me at Fight Circus in Thailand documenting the event. Boom, 10 million organic views. Goes crazy viral. One of the craziest videos I've ever
Blob
had.
Tang.
Boom, third one is me doing a crazy trick shot in Manchester for a promo for my pop-up. The fourth is me walking Lonnie out in his UFC debut with over 1 million views, and it goes crazy viral. The fifth is me and Kaz doing a Food Fighters episode. Like, it's things like this now. When I land on my profile, I'm thinking, right, finally, I'm curating the look and the vision that I'm having. And whilst I remember, I've got that voice note I sent you this week of what happened at the hotel. Do you remember?
Wait, oh, my mind's drawing a blank. About, say it.
Mate.
I literally just jogged my memory because I'm going to get it straight away as soon as you say it.
But I'll just, for the people listening,
yeah, good, yeah.
I'll tell the story, right? So there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle of throwing the pop-up, as you can imagine, and not just the more macro things like making sure the comic is there and making sure that's on time. They're all obviously the bigger pieces to the puzzle, but there's a million and different things that you sort of have to take care of as well, like making sure the bags are there, making sure the stamp, the ink, the tubing packages for the posters, making sure you have a Sharpie, which is silver ink, so that when Lon signs it, you can see it, and all these small elements. So the reason I say that is because there's a lot of things that were all at my house that I then had to transfer over to London. So instead of getting the train back, because I had 20 bags with me or something stupid, I thought, right, I'll get a cab from mine to the hotel, the Hilton Hotel in Canary Wharf, which is the Fighters Hotel, which is where I stayed all week. So I actually stayed in Nathaniel's room. He stayed at home, so he said, you can have my room. So I stayed in his room all week. So I get a cab back to the hotel. And funnily enough, I'm actually wearing what I'm wearing now. So this is the UFC walkout.
I was going to mention that.
Gear that they give you, because it's just super comfortable. And it looks cool, but it is just ridiculously comfortable. And one small point I'll make is you will notice I have the England badge on this one.
I did notice that.
Yeah, the England badge on this one. So now I've got the English one for Nathaniel's, and I've got the Chinese badge as well for Lonnie. So I am
nice,
super happy with that, right? I find that really cool. Regardless, I'm in the cab there. It just so happens the cab that turns up is a brand new Mercedes, sparkling new Mercedes. So I've got his full kit on, and I'm in this lovely car, and I get to the hotel, and because it's towards the end of the week, you're starting to get a lot more fans outside the hotel lobby. They can't go into the hotel because there's lots of security, but they all congregate outside waiting for fighters to come in and out and take photos and get signatures and whatnot. As we pull up, I'm seeing them all, and I'm seeing them all sort of gather towards the car, and I'm thinking in my head,
I'm gonna say this now. You did not tell me this.
Oh, did I
so
not
this
tell
is this is the first. No, this I was trying to decipher. I was like, did you tell me this? No, you didn't. You didn't. So now I can see where this is going. I am thoroughly invested.
So
in it.
we begin to pull up, and I'm seeing these people sort of crowd around the car, and I remember thinking, this is going to go one of two ways, right? I know how this is going to go. This is going to go one of two ways. They're either going to be very casual fans, and they won't actually realize that I'm not a fighter, and they'll just ask for pictures and autographs anyway, because that's what happens. When one person asks,
yeah, I'm sure
everyone does, because they just think it's someone's famous and they don't even know who it is. And that happens with actually quite big celebrities. I've seen it in firsthand.
Yeah, I've seen.
And it was either going to be that, or it was either going to be I get out the car, they realize I'm no one of importance, and they just go about their business as is. So I get out, and this one kid, the first kid comes up to me and goes, "Can I get a signature and a photo, please?" And I remember thinking in my head, oh, just do it, Will, and blag it. It'll be a funny story. I was just thinking in my head, just pop your chest out and act like you're someone, and this will be a funny story, right? So he pulls the t-shirt out and gives me the pen, and I'm signing the t-shirt, and he was like, "Oh, thanks so much, Will. Like, I really appreciate it." I was like,
No.
"What?" And then the second kid goes, "Oh, can I get a photo? Can I get a photo?" I was like, "Sure." And he was like,
Legendary.
"Keep it casual." And I was thinking, what is happening? And I ended up signing about 4 t-shirts and getting about 4 photos and thinking, what is happening? What is happening? It caught me severely off guard, but it was quite a cool moment, to be fair.
Mate, I was thinking, I had a suspicion. I was like, what if they do know who you are? I feel like that's a realistic possibility given your reach. And we've spoken about that before. Having that, as I said literally earlier, right, about having that engagement, having a viewer base or a follow base that are so highly engaged, not just with your content, but with you. And that's the transition you made probably over the last 2 years, which I'm sure you would say is the most important thing you've done, is going from just being a normal news outlet. And that is, but everything is about you in not like a narcissistic way, but it's built around you and your interests. And that's why your followers now are so engaged. And that's probably why they knew who you were as well. So, I mean, that's just a small, it might be a small incident or a small thing, but it's a reflection of some larger movements at play, which are all down to you and your decisions. So
I think for one point as well, you hit the nail on the head there. And I know this is true because it works the same in reverse. I've met people in real life who I've followed for a long time on socials, right? Or more times than not, I listen to their podcasts. So I have a lot of information on them, or I have a lot of context to their life. So you feel like you know someone a lot better. So like you just said there, where all of the content that I create is around me, it is around my interests, it is around things I'm doing. People feel like they have a really intimate look into your life. So they feel like they know you a lot better. So it was kind of insane, but it was equally super cool. I'll be real. It was super cool.
Yeah, I feel like something I hear a lot of celebrities say is they don't particularly like, I'm talking like mega celebs, right? The people who are bombarded, with that sort of experience on a larger scale. A lot of them talk about how they miss that sort of fine line where they don't get recognized all the time and they could go out freely and do the things they want. And people recognizing them or asking them for a photo would be a sort of welcome, a nice thing during the day, right? I feel like you're at that point, right? There's that sort of middle ground where that's exactly where you need to be. And I don't know if you're chasing anything further than that or superstardom. I know that's never really been your goal in the first place, but unfortunately, the reality of being a public figure online is that's just what comes with it. That's part of the game. So I don't know how your feelings are towards that going forward. Not necessarily with regards to your decisions and how you'd approach it, but I'm just curious on what your overall feelings looking forward, hypothetically, right?
I've said before, and I'll say it again. I think we live in this weird period of time where people think that because so many more people have reach and attention and engagement online, that we live in this world where sort of so many people are quote unquote famous, right? Just to use a very generic term.
Yeah.
But I actually have a very different view of this. And this is purely anecdotal as well as just a hypothesis. I actually believe it's starkly the reverse. I really do. I think if you go back 20 years, there's no social media really. There aren't really many news outlets in regards to just people's opinions and whatnot. So the famous people are the people that are on TV and that are in movies for the most part, right? And that is a much smaller selected pool of people. So that it means people's attention is not as diverted and it goes more channeled into these personalities and these people. Whereas nowadays, there's infinite people with millions of followers all around the world. And because we're so tunneled in to follow exactly people within the areas that we want, we don't really know people outside of it. So, for example, I've been at events where I've seen someone that's got millions of followers. I've had no idea who they are because I don't really follow that line of work. And like I said, it's the case with so many people now. So I think people think, oh, you get 100,000, couple 100,000, few 100,000, million followers on Instagram. You're going to walk out the house and you're never going to be able to move because everyone wants taking photos.
Yeah, it's not the same.
I actually think you're as irrelevant as ever. Now, if you go into a world where the demographic of followers are going to be highly concentrated, I think it's going to be a different story. So if I'm in London and I'm going to the MMA Fighters Hotel, then yes, I would imagine that there's going to be more people who know who I am.
Yeah.
But if I'm just in the city and I'm walking through the streets, no one is going to come up to me. And that's me on a micro scale. That is the same for people even on a macro scale. I take someone like Kaz is a good example, right? Obviously, I know her fairly well and I'll spend a good amount of time with her here and there, but she's got millions of followers. She's been all plastered all over the TV recently, but she doesn't walk out the house and she doesn't walk out on the streets and she's inundated with people trying to take photos of her. Do you know what I mean? So sometimes people get put off a little bit by, oh, there's higher viewing metrics and they think their life's going to... No, I don't think so, to be honest. I think...
Don't work that way.
Yeah.
Would you rather not be down that path at all in terms of towards public fame? I'm not saying I don't think you're going to be at that level, and don't take that the wrong way. I just mean it in the sense within the realms of being who you are. It's not the same, as you said, as being like a mega celebrity. So, but would you at the same time prefer complete anonymity in some capacity as a sort of hypothetical?
There's two parts to this, right? The first part is, I think it's inevitable that I will be. It's just inevitable. How could I possibly be at the top of a sport which I believe is going to be the fastest growing sport in the next 5 years in toe wrestling? How is it possible for me to be at the top of that sport, build a clothing empire and brand that I believe is going to be one of the strongest in the world, and cross them over and have my own personal brand and not be at that level? I think, logically speaking, I would have to be. I think of Ben Francis. This is a perfect example, right? I always think of Ben Francis in that. Ben Francis built Gymshark, and since I was a kid, I had these sort of ideas of building those sort of businesses and executing to that sort of level. So if I look at someone like him or James Smith, for example, I don't see myself any different to these type of guys. And I think of what they do. So I think it's only logical that I'll be on that sort of level of attention, if that makes sense. Now, the second part to that is you would rather be rich and anonymous than poor and famous. I certainly would be, and I think most people would be. But in the book of Naval Ravikant, which I always reference, a friend said to him once, if I have to put up with all of the pitfalls which come with that attention for the fact that I have complete freedom and can look after my family indefinitely, I make that trade every single day. And that's the same for me. If that is the cost, like, I know we're obviously speaking, I've just told a story which is like the 0.1%, but I'm just extrapolating to the extreme, right? If that's the cost of me being able to have total, complete freedom financially and just personally, then so be it. Like I said, I would rather be rich and anonymous than poor and famous, but it is what it is, you know?
Yeah. Freedom is actually is a sentiment. When I was, as I said earlier, about talking with a few of the creators who were there at the pop-up, that was all the sentiment that we were sort of sharing. We all kept saying the same thing about, wanting to pursue it on a larger scale and just having that luxury of being able to go to things like this just on a whim because we can. And we're not bound by any rules and things. And as I said earlier, for the pop-up, with regards to that, it was just really nice to, have common ground with people, because obviously we speak, on the podcast and all that about these things, but it's nice to, in person, meet with those people who we've had conversations with, like Adam, for example, and everyone in that room is like-minded, I think, for the most part. And that was such a eye-opening thing for me. Because as I said earlier, about YouTube and about the social media space and being content creators, being so isolated, it was great to just be on the same page with everyone for a couple of hours. And that's just speaking about the pop-up going forward. I feel like if you are to replicate it and do it on a larger scale, that should always be the main objective, right? Is to sort of sate a group of people who all have the same interests and goals in mind creatively.
Well, this is the thing, right? I have no choice but to do that. There's no other potential outcome other than that, because think about it. It all starts with the content, with the brand, with the message that I put out. So with every single piece of content that I put out, I'm essentially curating my audience. So if I continue to curate an audience which has interest in whatever I have innate interest in, then the byproduct of that would have to be like-minded people to some extent. Not necessarily all the same person, but they'll have to be like-minded to some extent, right? Even if it was as surface level as, I like MMA. Now, you're going to have some people in that room that is more surface level and you have less things in common. Then you're going to have people that, again, I remember I told you before, my cousin once said to me, it's just, oh, your age is people. Your age is people. And connecting dots and joining things up. And I think if nothing else, the one thing that will remain constant is exactly that. You'd be able to go into the room and network with a bunch of different people, because that's what I've always done. I've always been a part of different circles. I've always sort of joined up the dots with people. There's a million ways I could segue this, because I met some crazy people this week and it's been hectic. It was...
That's a good place to round off. What's the craziest thing or craziest person, conversation, entanglement that happened within that week? Fight week, UFC London 2025.
I don't think it was the craziest, but a funny one is that I was chatting to Tom Aspinall's... So Sean obviously was the guest. Sean Aspinall was the guest. And he messaged me the other day and said, oh, Tom was speaking about you the other day, which I found kind of cool, because
oh yes, I remember.
Didn't know he really engaged in my work. Him personally, his gym follows me, his team follows me, but him personally, I don't know what he sees, you know? I don't know if he saw that. But so I was chatting to his manager because we were actually going to get a bit of work done in the week. It ended up not coming to fruition because it's a bit short notice, but I saw them in the lobby, so I went and said hello to his manager, Charlie, or the guy who runs his media. And then I saw Tom, so I said, oh, hello, mate. Nice to meet you. Doesn't say anything but, you've got some nice biceps, you have. And that was it. That was literally it. So I was like, cheers. That is a great way to have.
Hey, listen, if there's one compliment to get from anyone, if you're going to get that compliment from anyone, you definitely want it to be Tom Aspinall.
Apart from
that man is towering.
Felder had a good another good conversation with Felder. Obviously, I know
good chin wag.
I know him a little bit at this
of course
at this point. Met him out in Abu Dhabi, gave him the issue 2 of Casuals comic.
I remember. I actually thought about that the other day, you know. That came into my head, just you telling that story. Yeah. I remember when I was looking at the Casuals comics, I was thinking about you talking about giving one to Paul Felder. He's someone I'd love to have a conversation with.
I'll see if we can get him on the podcast for sure, because
that would be class.
Have a little chin wag.
Great mind of the game. I was watching one of his, that spinning elbow or back fist knockout he had a few years ago, came up on my feed today. I was like, man, just reminded me of my love for MMA.
Couple other funny stories, more funny than like super interesting, but just some funny fight week stories, because these things happen. One was, I was in the lift by myself. Did you see Jan Blachowicz got given this doll?
I think so. I think I saw something. Yeah, I either saw or read something about a doll. Yeah.
Dragon Ball Z. So I learned...
Oh, yeah.
I'd learned that he got given this after this event took place. But I'm in the lift and the the lift doors just open. The funny thing is about the Fight Hotel is you always end up, or at least I always end up, with the most random people in the lift. So I have about 3 lift stories I'm going to give you. The first one being, The doors open. I'm by myself. The doors open like this, and the only person that is standing, literally bang in front of the door, is a semi-naked Jan Blachowicz in just swimming shorts, holding this weird Dragon Ball Z doll. That is all I see when the lift doors open. It was the most bizarre thing I'd ever seen, and the most random thing I'd ever seen. Semi-naked Jan Blachowicz with a Dragon Ball Z doll, which at the time I thought it was the Hulk. I'm a casual with things like that.
Oh, mate, that's bad. I don't even watch anime. That is bad.
I'm flipping, no. The second thing, obviously, Lon and Nave's manager is Jose Diaz. First round management of John Jones and Ilia Topuria. And Ilia Topuria was at fight week and was chatting to Jose about different things. And then next thing I know, again, I'm in the lift by myself and I'm just about to walk out, and then 6 people sort of like storm in the lift, and I sort of step back a little bit. Next thing I know, the door's closing, and it is just me, Jose, Ilya, and the security. So now I'm just stood in this lift with Ilia Topuria. By the way, much bigger in real life than people realise.
How tall is he, do you reckon?
He's the exact same build as Volk, but a little bit taller.
I mean, I haven't met Volk in person either, so I don't have the scale.
No, you haven't, but the narrative around Volk is
I
set,
know,
right? He's built, he's like bricky, and he's a lump. He is a lump. Like, you shake hands with him, like he's dense, like his forearms are big, his back's big, and he's a dense, muscular man. Exact same thing with Ilia Topuria. Very sort of stocky, a lot bigger than people realise. And I said it at the time, and I'll say it again, looked like he smelt incredible.
He does look like that, doesn't he?
Yeah, he really did.
That's always the vibes I got. Yeah. Did you have a conversation, or was it an awkward sort of silence ride?
I don't do awkward silences, to be honest. I just don't do them.
Love that.
I'll just work through it. I won't say on the pod the awkward one I did have, but even that I worked through.
Oh, you got to tell me afterwards.
I'll tell you off air that one. But no, I just said like hello, and he was super nice, and then he asked Jose in Spanish, "Who am I?" Basically, he was like, "Who is this?" Because the reason I say that is because the security was like trying to kick me out, or not kick me out.
Oh shit!
Kind of like leave, right? And Jose was like, "No," and he was like, "Oh, who is he?" And then he told him. He said, "Oh, Casual's gone at Maiden." He did. I heard video.
Keep it casual.
In Spanish. I heard something about the video or something in Spanish. So that was another one. The next one is, I did get caught in the lift solo with Bruce Buffer, but that isn't the funny part, right?
Oh, you didn't fight him, did you?
No, I did not fight him.
Replicate that story.
I did not fight him, but he did go into the sauna after we'd had a workout in the gym, and we went into the sauna, and the boys were there, and I just left. He went into the sauna fully clothed with his shoes on.
What?
I know. That guy.
That might be the only character flaw. Actually, that's not even a flaw. That's a positive. He does not give a shit. Yeah. What the fuck? Wait, no, he's not. He wasn't dressed to the nines though, was he? We're talking like casual wear.
Full suit.
No, you're taking the piss, man. No, still though. Wait, but did he actually go in full clothes though?
It was gym outfit, but it was full gym outfit and shoes in the sauna.
Fair, you know what? Fair enough. Who are you to argue, or anyone to argue with what Bruce Buffer does, considering his status in the sport? And I do feel, considering that was the third story, we like rules of 3. It's a nice round time, and also your camera has just turned off, so I feel like that's good timing to wrap it up for a really engaging episode of the MMA Creators Podcast, episode number 90-something. I always lose track. Thank you very much for listening, and we will see you next Sunday. Have a good one.